My name is Sarah Mitchell, and I'm 32 years old. For 8 years, I thought I had built a life with the man I loved. I thought I had earned my place in his family through patience, kindness, and countless sacrifices. But on New Year's Eve, standing outside my mother-in-law's front door with expensive gifts in my hands and hope in my heart, I learned the truth. I was never family. I was never even close. I was just a paycheck they had been cashing for years. If you've ever felt invisible in your own marriage, or been treated like an outsider by the people who were supposed to accept you, hit that subscribe button, because what happened next didn't just change my life, it shattered theirs. The snow was falling softly as I drove to Margaret's house that evening. My mother-in-law lived in a beautiful 2-story colonial in the suburbs, the kind of house that screamed old money and family legacy. I had spent the last 3 days preparing a traditional Italian cream cake from scratch, Margaret's favorite. I also brought personalized gifts for everyone: a cashmere scarf for Margaret, a designer wallet for my husband Michael, and educational toys for my niece and nephew, Jessica's kids. I was excited, despite everything. Despite the subtle coldness and the passive-aggressive comments over the years, I kept trying. I kept believing that one day Margaret would finally see me as her daughter, not just as the woman who married her son. Michael had left earlier that afternoon, saying he needed to help his mother set up for the party. I offered to come along, but he insisted I take my time and arrive later. Looking back now, I realize that was the first red flag I ignored that day. When I pulled into the driveway, I could hear music and laughter coming from inside the house. The windows glowed warmly, and I could see shadows of people moving around. My heart lifted. This was going to be a good night. This year would be different. I balanced the cake carrier in one hand, and the shopping bag of gifts in the other as I walked up the porch steps. The wreath on the front door sparkled with tiny lights. I rang the doorbell, smiling, ready to be welcomed into the celebration. The door opened. Margaret stood there in an elegant navy dress, her silver hair perfectly styled, her lipstick immaculate. But the moment she saw me, her smile vanished. She didn't say hello. She didn't step aside to let me in. She just stood there, blocking the doorway, looking at me like I was a door-to-door salesperson who had interrupted her evening. I tried to laugh it off. "Hi, Margaret. Happy New Year. Sorry I'm a little late. Traffic was crazy." She didn't move. Her eyes were cold, scanning me from head to toe with an expression I had never seen before. It wasn't just disapproval. It was contempt. Then she said the words that would haunt me for weeks. "Sarah, this year is just for the real family. You can go home." I stood there, frozen, the cold air biting at my face. For a moment, I thought I had misheard her. "What?" "You heard me," she said, her voice flat and final. "This is a family-only event. You're not needed here tonight." My hands started shaking. The cake carrier felt like it weighed 100 pounds. "Margaret, I don't understand. Michael is inside, right? I'm his wife. I am family." She let out a small, bitter laugh. "Legally, maybe. But blood is blood, Sarah. And you're not blood." Behind her, I could see into the living room. There was Jessica, Margaret's precious daughter, lounging on the couch with her husband, laughing at something on her phone. Her 2 kids were running around with party hats. And there, sitting in the armchair near the fireplace, was Michael, my husband. He looked up, saw me standing at the door, and quickly looked away. He didn't stand up. He didn't come to defend me. He just sat there staring at the floor like a coward. I felt something crack inside my chest. "Michael!" I called out, my voice breaking. "Michael, what is this?" He still didn't move. Margaret stepped forward, forcing me to take a step back onto the porch. "Sarah, don't make this harder than it needs to be. Just go home. We'll see you another time." And then she closed the door, right in my face. I heard the lock click. I stood there in the snow, holding a cake I had made with love, holding gifts I had chosen with care, and I felt smaller than I had ever felt in my entire life. The laughter inside the house continued. The music played on, and I was outside, alone, on New Year's Eve, rejected by the family I had tried so hard to be part of. Tears blurred my vision as I walked back to my car. I put the cake on the passenger seat and drove home in silence, my mind spinning with humiliation and disbelief. How had it come to this? What had I done to deserve being treated like a stranger? But as the shock began to fade, something else started to grow inside me. Anger. Cold. Sharp. Unforgiving anger. When I got home, I didn't cry. I didn't collapse on the couch and feel sorry for myself. Instead, I opened my laptop and logged into our shared bank account. If Margaret wanted to play the family card, I was going to see exactly what kind of family I had married into. What I found made my blood run cold. Our joint savings account, the one Michael and I had opened together to save for our future, to eventually buy a bigger house, to start a family of our own, was nearly empty. We should have had over $60,000 in there. Instead, there was less than $3,000. I scrolled through the transaction history, my heart pounding faster with every line. Monthly transfers, thousands of dollars, sent directly to Margaret's account. Some months it was $2,000, other months, $5,000. The transfers had been happening for over 3 years. 3 years. While I was working 50-hour weeks as a software engineer, bringing home the bigger paycheck, budgeting carefully, skipping vacations, and cutting back on my own spending to build our future, Michael had been draining our savings and sending it to his mother. And it wasn't just Margaret. There were transfers to Jessica too. Smaller amounts, but consistent. Payments labeled as loan or emergency help. But they kept happening, month after month. I sat back, staring at the screen, trying to process what I was seeing. This wasn't a one-time mistake. This was systematic. This was planned. This was theft. My phone buzzed. A text from Michael. "Stay at home tonight. I'll be back late. Don't wait up." I didn't respond. Instead, I kept digging. I opened Michael's laptop, the one he left at home because he said it was too old and slow. His password was our wedding date. How ironic. I found his WhatsApp on the desktop version still logged in. And there it was. A group chat called The Real Andersons. The members were Michael, Margaret, and Jessica. I scrolled through the messages, and with every word I read, the woman I used to be, the woman who tried so hard to please everyone, began to die. Margaret had written just 2 days earlier. "Make sure Sarah doesn't see the bank statements this month. She's been asking questions." Michael replied, "I'll handle it. She trusts me." Jessica sent a laughing emoji. "She's so clueless. How long are we going to keep this going?" Margaret responded, "As long as we need to. She makes good money. We'd be stupid not to use it. Keep her working hard. She's our golden goose." Michael added, "She wanted to cut back her hours next year to focus on starting a family. I convinced her we're not ready yet. We need her income." Jessica wrote, "Smart. The last thing we need is her getting pregnant and going part-time. We need that engineer salary." They continued mocking me, laughing about how I had believed their lies, how I had trusted Michael when he said his mother was going through financial trouble after his father's death. They joked about how I had even paid for Jessica's kids' private school tuition last year because Jessica claimed she couldn't afford it. It was all a lie. Every single bit of it. I sat in the dark living room, the glow of the laptop screen illuminating my face, and I felt something I had never felt before. Not sadness, not heartbreak, just pure, ice-cold clarity. I had been used, manipulated, betrayed by the man I loved and the family I tried to accept. But they had made one critical mistake. They underestimated me. I took screenshots of everything, every message, every bank transfer, every piece of evidence. Then I opened my personal email and sent it all to myself, along with copies to a secure cloud drive. I sat back and looked around the house. Our house. Except it wasn't our house. It was my house. I had bought it 3 years before I even met Michael, using my savings and my income. When we got married, I never added his name to the deed. My lawyer had advised me to keep it separate, and I had agreed, thinking it was just a formality. Now, that decision was about to become the most important choice I had ever made. I checked my phone. It was almost midnight. Somewhere across town, the real family was counting down to the new year, celebrating without me, believing they had won. But the game wasn't over. It was just beginning. And this time, I was going to play by my rules. The next morning, I woke up with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. There were no tears, no doubt, just a cold, methodical certainty about what I needed to do. I made coffee, sat at the kitchen table, and started writing a list. Michael came home around 2 a.m, drunk and stumbling. He mumbled something about having a great time and passed out on the couch. I didn't wake him. I didn't confront him. Not yet. I needed everything in place first. At 8 a.m., I called my office and took the day off. Then I called my lawyer, David Harrison, a sharp, no-nonsense attorney I had worked with when I bought the house. I told him I needed to see him immediately. He heard the tone in my voice and cleared his schedule. By 9:30, I was sitting in his office, laying out everything I had discovered: the bank statements, the screenshots of the WhatsApp group, the timeline of transfers. David listened without interrupting, his expression growing darker with every detail. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair and let out a low whistle. "Sarah, this is financial abuse, and depending on how we approach it, this could also be grounds for fraud, especially if he forged your signature on any documents." "I want a divorce," I said, my voice steady, "and I want to make sure he gets nothing." David nodded. "Given that the house is in your name alone, and you have clear evidence of him misappropriating marital funds without your knowledge or consent, we can build a very strong case. But I need to ask, are you sure? Once we start this process, there's no going back." I looked him straight in the eye. "I've never been more sure of anything in my life." He smiled grimly. "Then let's make sure they regret ever underestimating you." We spent the next 3 hours strategizing. David recommended we move quickly and decisively. File for divorce. Freeze the joint accounts. Document everything. He also suggested I consider filing a civil suit against Margaret and Jessica for their roles in the conspiracy, especially since they had knowingly received marital funds under false pretenses. But I wanted more than legal justice. I wanted them to feel the humiliation I had felt standing on that porch in the snow. That afternoon, I went to the bank and froze our joint accounts. I also opened a new personal account and transferred my paycheck direct deposit to it. Then I changed all the passwords on our shared streaming services, cloud storage, and utilities that were in my name. Michael was still passed out when I got home. I packed a bag for him, nothing fancy, just enough clothes for a few days, and left it by the front door. Then I called a locksmith. By 5 p.m., every lock in the house had been changed. I had new keys. Michael's old keys would no longer work. At 6 p.m., Michael finally woke up, groggy and confused. He stumbled into the kitchen where I was sitting calmly with a cup of tea. "Hey, babe," he mumbled, rubbing his face. "What time is it?" "Time for you to leave," I said evenly. He blinked, trying to process my words. "What?" I slid a folder across the table toward him. "Divorce papers. You're being served tomorrow, but I thought I'd give you a courtesy heads up. Your bag is by the door. The locks have been changed. You're no longer welcome in this house." His face went pale. "Sarah, what are you talking about? Is this because of last night? Look, I'm sorry my mom was rude, but you're overreacting." I pulled out my phone and opened the screenshots of the WhatsApp group. I turned the screen toward him. "Read." He looked down, and I watched the color drain completely from his face. His hand started shaking. "Sarah, I can explain." "Explain what?" I said, my voice like ice. "Explain how you've been stealing from me for 3 years? Explain how you and your mother and sister have been laughing at me behind my back, calling me your golden goose? Explain how you convinced me we weren't ready to start a family because you needed my income to fund your mother's lifestyle?" "It's not like that," he stammered, his voice cracking. "My mom was struggling. She needed help." "Your mom drives a BMW and just renovated her entire kitchen," I shot back. "Jessica takes her kids on Disney vacations twice a year. They weren't struggling. They were greedy. And you helped them steal from me." Michael's face crumpled. "Please, Sarah, don't do this. I love you. We can work this out." I stood up, my chair scraping against the floor. "You don't love me. You never did. I was just a paycheck. And now that paycheck is gone. Get out of my house." "This is my house too," he shouted, desperation creeping into his voice. I smiled coldly. "No, Michael, it's not. This house is in my name only. Check the deed. You have no legal claim to it. And thanks to your little embezzlement scheme, you have no claim to anything else either." He stared at me, realizing for the first time that I wasn't the passive, accommodating woman he thought he married. I was done being used. "You can't do this," he whispered. "Watch me," I said. "Now get out before I call the police and have you removed for trespassing." He grabbed his bag and stumbled toward the door, his face a mixture of shock and rage. At the threshold, he turned back. "My mother is going to destroy you for this." I laughed, a sound I didn't recognize coming from my own throat. "Your mother doesn't even know what's coming. But she will. Very soon." The door slammed behind him. I locked it, leaned against the wood, and finally let out the breath I had been holding. It was done. The first move was made, but I wasn't finished. Not even close. Over the next 2 weeks, I executed the rest of my plan with surgical precision. David filed the divorce papers, citing financial abuse and irreconcilable differences. Michael tried to contest it, but the evidence was overwhelming. The WhatsApp messages alone were enough to destroy any defense he tried to mount. But the real fireworks came when I filed a civil suit against Margaret and Jessica. David advised me that since they had knowingly received funds that were taken from marital accounts without my consent, they could be held liable for conversion of assets. It was a long shot, but the goal wasn't necessarily to win. The goal was to make their lives hell. The lawsuit was filed publicly, which meant it became part of the public record. I made sure a few key people in Margaret's social circle knew about it. Within days, the whispers started. Margaret, the woman who prided herself on her reputation and standing in the community, was being sued by her own daughter-in-law for financial exploitation. Jessica called me, screaming into the phone. "You're ruining our lives. My kids are being bullied at school because of this. How could you?" I listened calmly, then said, "You should have thought about that before you called me clueless and laughed about using me. Actions have consequences, Jessica. Welcome to yours." She hung up, sobbing. Margaret tried a different approach. She showed up at my door one evening, her face tight with barely controlled rage. "You need to drop this lawsuit, Sarah. This is family business. We can work this out privately." I stood in the doorway, arms crossed. "I'm not family, remember? You made that very clear on New Year's Eve. This is business now, and my lawyer will be in touch." Her eyes narrowed. "You're making a huge mistake. You have no idea what I'm capable of." I smiled. "Neither do you, Margaret. Neither do you." She left, and I never heard from her again directly. But I heard through mutual acquaintances that she was scrambling, trying to liquidate assets to pay for her legal defense, trying to maintain her image while the lawsuit dragged her name through the mud. Michael tried to reconcile several times. Texts, emails, showing up at my workplace. Each time I ignored him or referred him to my lawyer. He finally gave up when the divorce was finalized 3 months later. I got the house, my retirement accounts, and a financial judgment against him for the money he had stolen. He got nothing. But the most satisfying moment came 6 months after that terrible New Year's Eve. I was at a coffee shop when I ran into an old colleague who knew Margaret socially. "I heard about everything," she said carefully. "I just wanted to say I'm sorry you went through that. But honestly, Sarah, you're better off. Everyone knows what they did now. Margaret barely shows her face anymore. And Michael, well, I heard he moved back in with his mother." I smiled. "That's fitting." She hesitated, then added, "You know, a lot of people admire what you did, standing up for yourself like that. It takes courage." As I drove home that day, I thought about the woman I used to be, the woman who stood on that porch in the snow, holding a cake and gifts, desperate to be accepted by people who saw her as nothing more than a bank account. That woman was gone, and in her place was someone stronger, someone who knew her worth, someone who would never again let anyone treat her as less than she deserved. My name is Sarah Mitchell. I'm 32 years old, and I learned the hardest way possible that family isn't about blood. It's about respect, love, and loyalty. And when those things are absent, sometimes the best thing you can do is walk away and build a new life on your own terms. If this story resonated with you, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. Drop a comment below telling me where you're watching from, and share your own story of standing up for yourself. Because sometimes the greatest revenge isn't what you do to others, it's what you do for yourself. The best part? A year later, I met someone new. Someone who saw me for who I really am. And when he introduced me to his family, his mother hugged me at the door and said, "Welcome home." That's when I knew I had finally found my real family.